When I was little, my dream was to become an inventor. I love drawing and trying to fix problems. That's why one of my favorite drawings. That's a shower that recycles water in a loop, so you don't use too much water. So I was 10 when I was doing that, so that's why we cannot see anything. But then I discovered that inventor wasn't really a job, that you have to become an engineer, for example. But then I realized that it wasn't really for me. I didn't want to stay in an office 24 hours a day, just trying to fix a small problem of a big puzzle. So I decided to join the Maritime Academy a few years ago to become a merchant navy officer, a sailor. So I've sailed on this kind of big passenger ship, container ships for a few years. And yeah, I was loving that. Sailing at sea, my office view was incredible, the sea all around. But still, there was something missing. There was this creating part, this invention that I didn't have. I had to stay on my track, on my red line, on the electronic chart, going from one point to another point. I didn't have the chance to innovate. So on the side, I started to do my own project. As a student, I started to take part in a humanitarian rally. So we had this kind of car, very old cars, and the challenge was to start in France and to go to Morocco with this car. And during this project, with a friend, we had the idea to collect soaps from hotels in Marseille and recycle them. You know this tiny soap, you use it only once when you wash your hand and then you throw it. We thought, okay, maybe we can collect these soaps and recycle them somehow. So we started with a small room in the backyard of the school, so collecting maybe 100 kilograms of these tiny soaps and washing them, shredding them in a carrot grater, and then putting them in the microwave to make new soap out of that, and going to the Moroccan desert. And so this is a school in the middle of the desert of Morocco, where we could raise awareness and just tell about the recycling soap we were doing. That was the starting point. After that, I was hooked by entrepreneurship. That's how I discovered that you can actually do something from yourself, start with a dream, a crazy idea, then hear that many people would tell you, well, you're not going to make it, it's not going to work, but still believing in it, struggling to find the first investors, then losing hope sometimes, but pulling yourself together and finally making it. That was the starting point. After that, I couldn't stop. So the next year, still as a student, I took part in another competition, this time to invent the shipping of tomorrow. So how to build boats, this kind of big container ship, that uses less energy, consume less, and pollute less. And once again, we didn't want to follow the path, and we had a crazy idea of this design of a boat midway between a submarine and a foiler boat. So half of it was underneath the waterline and half above, so we could just avoid the wave resistance that the boat creates when it just sails forward. So that led us to win a prize, an innovation prize, and to think, okay, we can actually invent stuff, we can find new ways where all the architects, all the people are doing the usual way of fixing problem. We have all the paths, all the ways to do. Few years after, I joined this time an explorer, a French explorer, that decided to work on low technologies. So when all the engineers were working on high technologies, iWatch, all this kind of stuff, he thought, yeah, 90% of the engineers are working for 10% of the population. So why don't we find a way to just make affordable solutions to anyone to have access to energy, water, food? So I climbed on this boat, this small boat, that was supposed to be a laboratory to try to live in self-sufficiency with all these small technologies. So for example, at the aft of the boat, we had a hen's house. So we had 4 hens that would provide eggs for the crew. On port side, we had little storms, and mushrooms that we were growing to eat. And inside the boat, we had a fire stove that consumes less wood and would enable us to just eat every day with very small quantity of energy. All these solutions affordable to anyone and open source or free of patent so that anybody can replicate. After that, I just fell in love with this approach of making affordable solutions. And when we called with this boat in Dakar, in Africa, that was the starting point of the bigger project. I realized all this plastic. I was struck by all these plastic pollutions everywhere, in the city, on the coastline, and at the same time, all these people trying to find small jobs to survive and striving to eat every day. And I thought, why don't we have the same approach? So taking all the systems, all the technology we know, the knowledge we have to treat this plastic, because we've been sending all these materials everywhere, but without the recipe to treat them. So why don't we have the same approach, take the system, the technology that exists today, and try to make affordable solutions to everyone. So for example, with the plastic waste, you can build houses. This is a house made up recycled plastic. So you just melt the plastic, and you can create raw materials, bricks, tile for the roof. And even when you cannot recycle it into plastic, into new materials, you can also make fuel out of it. So you can turn the plastic back into fuel. This is also something that exists today in the industry. So when I discovered that with 1 kilogram of plastic, you can make up to 1 liter of diesel and gasoline, I thought, okay, we need this kind of systems to bring them everywhere, in the people the most in need of these solutions. So the thing is, it all exists at an industrial scale, but the challenge this time was to build small-scale systems, or really at local scale, systems that are low-tech, easy to replicate, to build, and open source, free of patent, so that anybody can take the drawing and build its own one, to create its own small business and live with the waste then becoming a resource. So in order to spread the world this technology and try to improve them everywhere, we had the idea to build a boat that would be an ambassador of all these systems and that will prove that it is possible to have small-scale recycling technologies. So we started with a very small boat, 6 meters long, in Brittany, in France. We built the machine, so the prototype you see here on the boat enables us to turn plastic waste back into fuel. And thanks to that, we went all around France with this prototype, putting plastic waste and turning it back to fuel to power the ship. A bit like in Back to the Future, if you remember the movie. So this was the first prototype, called Ulysse, that went around France. We ended up also on the rooftop of the Galeries Lafayette in Paris. It was a good way to raise awareness and launch the project. And after that, we thought we're going to scale it up, and we're going to do not a 6 meter long boat, but a bigger one. So that's the boat we're about to buy and transform. That's a 40 meter long research vessel that will be transformed this year into a recycling laboratory. So on board, at the aft of the ship, we will have a full recycling laboratory, starting with plastic sorting, so system, very simple to identify and sort the different types of plastic. Then a machine to recycle the plastic into new materials, bricks or tiles, and eventually a small technology to turn plastic waste that are not recyclable anymore into fuel to power the ship. So the idea is to be really a demonstrator, an ambassador of all these systems that can be then replicated everywhere. And at the fore part of the ship, what we will do is to live without plastic, try to find a way to showcase solutions that could reduce our plastic footprint at roots, before the waste is produced. All of this will start in 2020, so in about 1 year. We will launch the expedition, starting in Marseille, and going around the world, around the coast of the most polluted area, so basically Africa, South America, and Asia, with the goal at every stop of improving the system with local communities and then spreading the drawings everywhere to build a network, a global network of small recycling facilities to help people make a living and stop this plastic from entering the ocean. That's the idea. And I'm telling you all of that because I wanted to share a reflection I had last day when somebody asked me, why are you doing all of this? Why are you doing this project? Why don't you just have a normal life, a normal job like everybody in the office? And I thought about it, and I realized that I could be maybe a crazy toad. I don't know if you've heard about the story tale of the crazy toads. Have you? It's a coincidence for French to talk about frogs, but but the crazy toad story is quite funny. Is that it says that the toads are moving in hordes, so in group, and they are all going to the same direction, all of them. Apart from some toads, we don't know why, they are going to other directions, completely different, and they are called the crazy toads. And thanks to them, when the horde crosses the highway, for example, and that everybody dies, the species survived thanks to these crazy toads that took another direction and maybe went beneath the highway. And thanks to them, the species survives. So it's a bit pretentious to say that I'm maybe a crazy toad, but I like to think about that. And maybe a last tip for you, if you want to be one of them, one of these crazy toads, maybe just don't listen to those people that would say it's not possible, you're not going to make it, and just forget you have no chance and do it. Thank you.